Iceland, on the confines of the Arctic Circle, is a fascinating island where an original hardy breed of men and women live out their purest aspirations. A touching authenticity beats in the hearts of its inhabitants. They know that nature here is uncompromising, so they have no other choice but to remain humble and to live thanks to what it can offer. Like this island, where the forces of the earth are visible everywhere, the Icelanders feel free and independent.
A bad day outside is always better than a good day in the office.
To be in nature is maybe the most important for me, just to be somewhere. It doesn't have to be spectacular, but just to feel the power of nature, the forest, and to be small in nature is something I really enjoy. And that's why I like to put up my tent a little bit off from the road, on a place that looks a little bit more wild and remote, and then feel one with nature. That's something I really enjoy.
Tayo has always been fascinated by earth sciences. First, he studied astronomy in the Netherlands, his home country. Then he went into glaciology, a discipline that allowed him to wed his two great passions, science and the mountains. Studying glaciers puts him on the cutting edge of climate warming research. This land, with the primitive, rugged force of its volcanic landscapes, symbolizes nature in its purest state.
The untouched wild nature is really putting into a corner, and it's getting less and less. So it's harder for us to come into contact with wild nature. There's some of it left in Iceland, which is very special. And I think it's very interesting and inspiring for me to try to keep these places that we still have on the planet and to really try to preserve it, because they become so precious and there are so few of them left.
Tayo moved to Iceland 4 years ago. This country is sitting on the world's most active hotspot, where one can observe the formation of our planet in real time. Iceland is a cauldron and a fascinating land of experimentation for scientists who, like Tayo, are actively committed to the preservation of the Earth. Well, if you don't have a driver's license and you're low on funds, hitchhiking is the best way to get around, even in this country with its often harsh weather. Today, Tayo is headed for a vast glacier field in the south to lead a scientific expedition. He'll be meeting up with his friend Joaquin at a refuge at the foot of the glacier Vatna.
okay if I go with you? Cool. Okay, cool. Where are you heading?
I'm going to Skaftafell.
Oh, cool.
Going to work.
Yeah. That's the same direction I'm going.
That's great.
Yeah, cool. What are you working with?
I'm working on the glacier, guiding people, taking trips.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Have you been on Fatlikul as well? Or?
Yeah, I've been on Fatlikul, and I've been on Skaftafellsjökull, I've been on Svínafellsjökull, I've been on Fjallsjökull, I've been on Heinabergsjökull, I've been on Breiðamerkurjökull, I've been on Skeiðarjökull. I've been on
all the glaciers from the south coast.
Yeah, I've taken most of the south coast and gone on all the glaciers because even if I have days off, I will still go on the glacier.
It is right.
It's really enjoyable for me because I'm always driving this route like a few times a month. So it's really enjoyable for me to meet up with people from all over the world that I can chat with them on the way. Time flies much faster when you have somebody in the car with you.
On a geological timescale, Iceland is no more than a newborn. Hardly 20 million years have elapsed since this island began to emerge from the volcanoes on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. Iceland is home to around 100 volcanoes that are a permanent threat to the population. Over the last few centuries, Iceland has experienced a major eruption every 5 years on an average. Vast expanses of the landscape are old lava fields covered in surface moss, while hidden beneath lie surprising geological formations.
So once this was a fresh eruption, it was a big lava field. And what happens at some point is that the surface cools down and that becomes solid, but then the lava can still flow under it. So here the surface cooled down first, but then inside here was kind of a river of lava that flowed through this tube. That's why it's called the lava tube.
Ever since the first Vikings landed on the shores of Iceland more than 1,000 years ago, the settlers here have managed to survive on their island by waging a constant struggle with the hostile, violent land. A very revealing episode of that struggle took place in the Westman Islands off the southern coast of Iceland. January 23rd, 1973. In the middle of the night, fountains of lava burst forth from the Helgafell volcano overlooking the fishing village and flowed down to the sea in a torrent of molten rock. 5,000 inhabitants were rapidly evacuated to the mainland. The eruption would last several months, burying the town under tons of ash. Down through the generations, Icelanders have learned that they mustn't look on nature as an enemy. that they could contain its wrath by remaining humble before it and using their wits. The population of Westman refused to give in to the fury of the earth and mobilized in an amazing show of solidarity. Rescue workers decided to pump millions of tons of seawater onto the lava flows to stop their advance. In this Homeric battle of water against fire, the port and a part of the town were saved.
Joaquin, yo, what up, dude? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice.
You managed.
Yeah, I got here. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so we're having pasta with tuna and tomato sauce.
Wow, nice.
Pretty sweet.
Typical mountaineering food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fast.
I'm gonna start also checking the...
Joaquin, a Spaniard, also felt the magnetic pull of this majestic island. Like Tayo, he spends all his time in an effort to understand the mechanisms of our planet in order to better defend it. The two friends are going to ascend the glacier tomorrow to set up a GPS device that will measure the glacier's speed.
Yeah.
So we're just going to these crevasses right there, because it's still moving quite fast, but not too fast.
Yeah, and it must be amazing, the landscape of there. I have never been in that area, so I'm really looking forward.
Yeah, okay. I never really, they're pretty cool, but I never really saw it before.
The platform that Tayo has picked out in the midst of the crevices is a 3-hour hike from the refuge. Glaciers cover 10% of the Earth's surface, but all over the world their area is shrinking year by year. These giants of ice are one of the more visible signs of the climate change our planet has been subject to. You can see with your own eyes that they are dying. Tayo and Joaquin have chosen to devote their lives to exploring glaciers in order to bear witness to their rapid decline. Their work leads to predictions about another phenomenon that concerns us all, the rising sea levels and its direct consequence, the disappearance of inhabited land.
I'm working a bit more with satellite images, and he's working with GPS. With a satellite image, you can get the full glacier, and with this, you can get a really, really accurate one single point. So the best is, of course, to combine both. Yeah.
I think it's rolling.
Yeah. So here is the number of satellites.
At this place, I really feel like home. It's a really special place. I have often the feeling the glaciers are calling me. They're kind of making, talking to me, saying, "Come, come."
The glacier that Tayo and Joaquin are studying is part of Europe's largest glacier zone. In October 1996, in this same spot, the volcano under the glacier awoke. The ice cap was blown into the sky in a gigantic eruption of ash and steam. The millions of cubic meters of melted ice ran off and formed a lake. When the ice damming the lake gave way, the mass of water released swept away everything in its path. For geologists, it stands out as one of the most remarkable eruptions of the century, for these are the natural phenomena that formed Iceland's present landscapes. Before such a spectacle, men like Tayo naturally take a philosophical perspective of the mechanisms governing the colossal forces of our planet.
When I was studying physics, I was thinking about what life is. And in physics, you think a lot about time, and time makes change possible. And in a way, time is change. And I started to think about that maybe the change itself is life. Everything that changes is life. So it's a much broader and wider concept of what life is. In that way of looking at the world, a glacier is also a living thing. Right here we're making a little cairn so we can find the right way down. But it's very small. We want to keep it small because we're in the National Park of Iceland and we're not supposed to make cairns because then people will always follow the same trail and they don't want to have a lot of trails going through the National Park. So on the way down, hopefully you can find it and then destroy it on the way down. Wow, crazy man.
Cool. Nice. Wow.
Spectacular.
Wow. You will miss completely all of those things, all of those details. If you are just sitting on the office, even if you are working with the glaciers, you're missing like half of the experience. The best way to know how they are is just to look at them. So, yeah. Ah, okay, that's the whole point. I don't know. Some geological stuff must happen there.
It's a country where people have suffered from nature for a long time, and it's harsh. It's really rough, and that's all part of it. And you can't kind of sit in a car or stay on the main road and escape everything and try to pretend like it's not there. But I like to be outside and to have it in my face, to feel the wind, to feel cold, and actually to feel miserable, to feel bad, and to kind of suffer. I think it's a part of it. I think you cannot really be in Iceland without suffering.
Tayo is not about to leave this country. He is pursuing his research with dogged determination, hoping to unlock the secrets of the glaciers. The commitment of these men may one day allow us to better predict the changes of our planet. Weather permitting, the captain of the Draumur scans the waters of the fjord of Dalvik. These arms of the sea that cut deep into the land provide food and shelter for an abundance of whales. Leah was born here in Iceland 29 years ago. Her mother is French and her father, skipper of a fishing boat, Icelandic. She's a journalist and is presently doing an article on her native region, which is far off the beaten path.
Wow, great. That's a beautiful humpbacked whale putting on a show, for the pleasure of all concerned. The fjord is just swarming with whales, and we can see them now especially because winter is coming on, and this is when they migrate to the South Pacific. So this is the ideal season for whale watching. Before they head off in search of a warmer climate.
There were 10 of them here yesterday, so there could be 10 today as well.
The sea is calm today.
Yes, a beautiful day. Perfect for us, but sometimes it's harder to spot the whales when the sea is flat, because they just stay below the surface and don't do anything. They don't even come up to blow.
Leah is Franco-Icelandic. She studied philosophy in Paris. The subject of her dissertation was tolerance among different peoples, something she, with her mixed background, knows about firsthand. Drawing on her double culture, she writes for the Pourquoi Pas, a newsletter named after the ship of Commander Charcot, the French explorer who perished when his ship ran aground on the coast of Iceland.
This will appear in the little French newsletter I started with a few friends. It's meant for Iceland's French-speaking community and all lovers of Iceland. It will come out next summer, the July 2016 issue. We do one per year.
Leah spent the first 6 years of her life in Iceland. When her brother Victor was born, her mother decided to return to France with the 2 children. But Leah and Victor would spend their summer vacations in Dalvik with their Icelandic father.
Straddling the 2 cultures is tricky. Whichever country you're in, you're always kind of a foreigner. On the other hand, the great thing is, as Gyuth said, you never know your own language as well as when you speak another. And being a dual national maybe makes me someone who has an intimate knowledge of both countries, and that's a great asset. So I really consider that I belong in both countries. I could never choose.
When Victor came of age, he decided to settle permanently in Iceland and work on his father's fishing trawler. He also trained to become a river fishing guide.
I can't remember when I started fishing. I know I started very young. Whether it was fresh water, or the rivers, or the sea, I think it was my grandfather who took me fishing for the first time, and then it was my father. We would go every summer. So of course I love it. But it's not just the fishing, it's being out in nature, enjoying the environment. So it's the whole thing.
It's a very Icelandic thing, being a fisherman by profession and fishing as a hobby. Everything revolves around fishing. You work at sea and spend your vacations on the rivers.
Wow. Is that nice or what? It should flake off easily. It's cooked to perfection, nice and tender.
Yeah, I can tell.
Delicious.
The Icelandic word for stupid is heimskur, a person who has never left home. So the ideal is to go abroad and come back home. Then he won't be a heimskur. He didn't just stay at home. On the other hand, he can't not come back. That's how it is, right?
That's right. You always come back eventually.
It's like a magnet. There's nothing to match it. It's like absolute freedom.
Three times a week, the ferry heads out to Grimsey. Lost in the mists, this small island, worn and scarred by the wind and storms of the Atlantic, is a 3-hour boat ride to the north of Dalvik. Grimsey is a land out of time. Leah says that this island lying on the Arctic Circle embodies the very soul of Iceland. The tightly knit community of men and women is an ideal source of inspiration for the stories she writes for her paper. On Grimsey, there are no more than 90 inhabitants clinging to this little parcel of land. A port, a school, and just one store. Here, life revolves around the comings and goings of the fishing boats.
My grandfather was born on Grimsey. So, yes, we're necessarily cousins with everyone on the island. But here, it generally turns out that you're cousins with everybody. There's even an app for when you're at a party. You can check to make sure you're not coming onto your own cousin. But here, the risks are even higher, given the size of the island and the few families living here. The waves were a good 2.5 meters yesterday.
They're a little lower today, but they take time to settle down after a storm like that. The sea is still pretty rough.
The biggest cod there is 25 kilos, right?
That sounds about right. And now we're coming into the very best fishing season.
Really? Why?
Because there's less for the fish to eat in the ocean, so they'll take our bait more readily.
It's like the story of my family here. All the men are fishermen, so I've often been here when they'd bring their catch into port. I'd often be here to greet them. Same thing when they'd go out. I'd watch them leave. I used to see the men coming back, and then I'd ask them how it went, what kind of catch they got.
All year round, storms buffet Grimsey's black cliffs. These palisades form the ramparts of a wild land. The fishermen are well aware of their sea's reputation. Generous with its fish, but violent and unpredictable. Everyone here knows that you can't bargain with its whims. The storms beat down on the fishermen at sea, and the ocean is a beast that swallows them alive. Not a single family on Grimsey has been spared.
In the old days, many Icelanders lived in this type of place because there was food. And we should never forget that 100 years ago there was nothing here in Iceland. It was only after the Second World War that the whole infrastructure was created. But as my father always says, when they had Versailles in France, Iceland had only a few wooden houses. We have to keep in mind that this is still a new world. It's as if we farmers and fishermen here in Iceland all of a sudden woke up in a suit and tie. And Grimsey is still a testimony to how life used to be. The fact that there are still people living here is just amazing.
When you live on Grimsey, you necessarily have stories to tell. Like Bjarni, the village elder. He's sharing his love of the island with Leah.
Yeah. This is it?
It was originally a gas lighthouse. We turned it off at the beginning of the war.
So there was only the pastor left?
Only the pastor and 2 old-timers. We wrote to the bishop to find new men to settle in Grimsey.
Thank you.
It was nice.
It's pretty much the story of my life. Always meeting up with these people in France and Iceland, always trying to understand the cultures of the 2 countries. What makes these 2 populations so different when they're only 3 hours apart by plane? Yes, it's something I'm really interested in, and I've been trying to understand it since childhood. But I'm not sure I'll ever find an answer, not a clear-cut answer in any case. But through my articles and encounters, I can try to catch a glimpse of the answer.
I think, yeah, in some parts of the world, when people live in a city and they go to nature, like going to a museum or a park or something, they go and watch it, and then they go home again. That's not the life that I want to live. I just want to live in it. I want to be part of it, and I want to play with it. And it's a kind of also a freedom. I mean, you don't have any motor, you can go wherever you want. I mean, I could start tomorrow or today, we can just go on for many months, you know? Don't have to ask anybody. Freedom.
Siggy was born in the West Fjords. He worked as a naval architect in Iceland, in Canada, and in places the world over. 10 years ago, he gave it all up and bought a sailboat, the Aurora, to marry his 2 passions, the mountains and the sea. Thanks to his boat, Siggy can share his favorite spots of the West Fjords with other sports and nature lovers. Greenland, some 300 kilometers to the north, is a regular destination of his outings. But his favorite playground is still his own wild region. Here at the ends of the earth, nature is unforgiving, but it is wild and unspoiled like no other place in the world.
Þessi kafa kannski allir 3 eða 4 í einu.
Today, the two men on board the Aurora with him are his son, Haukur, and his cousin Vidar. The family will be spending a few days together so that Vidar can perfect his sailing techniques.
That was a humpback whale. I think they live quite comfortably here in this place, and probably the best thing we can do is just observe them and, you know, let them in peace. That's why you see a whale and, you know, what's it doing? I don't know. It's just being a whale, you know. Same as a whale. Look at me. What's it doing? Like just being a human, probably.
That's not allowed. Don't do that. Too late. We'll have to turn.
In a week, Vidar will be leaving for England to get his yachtmaster certification. Then he will also become a captain, the promise of a new life.
We turn there, and we'll be headed toward the trawler. And then we'll come back.
Tell me exactly when.
You just have to be careful not to slacken the jib.
Right.
9 months ago, while out skiing, Vidar was caught in an avalanche. It cracked several neck vertebrae and broke his arm.
Ready? Now you can let go. Take hold and pull. Very good.
Vidar barely survived, but he was laid up in the hospital for several weeks. His iron determination, along with painful sessions of physiotherapy, allowed him to gradually recover his mobility. And Siggy played a crucial role by training him in sailing.
He's giving me this opportunity to learn from him, you know, because he's been sailing for 20 years, you know. And it's also very important when, after an accident, when you're recovering, you have some sort of goal. And give me a purpose to get back, to get fit again and strong again, to go, to learn to sail, you know.
Oh yeah, he's getting well trained, you know. Better and better. Okay.
He's an inspiring person for sailing.
I knew Vidar from the time he was a baby almost, you know. He's a similar age to my son, Haukur. And I think he's been, he's still young. He's kind of feeling his way around life, and he's very interested in all these outdoor. We managed to convert him from skiing to sailing. So yeah, he's a good kid, and I think he can do some nice things.
The three men have dropped anchor off Hesteri, in the heart of the West Fjords. Siggy is well acquainted with the history of this abandoned village, which is a testimony to this region's past.
This is an Arctic fox. The Arctic fox is the only native mammal of Iceland. So when the Vikings arrived in Iceland 1,000 years ago, there was only one mammal in the whole country, and that was the Arctic fox. Yeah, generally in Iceland, in most places in Iceland, they are shot. But here in this region, they are protected because it's a nature reserve, and it's not allowed to shoot the foxes.
After the Second World War, Icelandic society underwent a total metamorphosis. The farmers and fishermen isolated in remote communities began to flee their living conditions, which were extremely harsh, particularly in winter. The decline of these villages, cut off from the rest of the world for 8 months of the year, became inexorable.
When they lost a doctor, that was the kind of the final nail in the coffin. Eventually, in the early 1950s, there's basically a few, 4 or 5 families left, and they just sat down and had a meeting and said, this is it, let's go all together. You know, we don't want to just slowly fade away. So they all packed up and went all together. 1952, I think the last people moved away. Since then, nobody's lived here.
Yet in its day, Hesteyri had up to 100 residents. There was even postal service, a store, and a school. Thanks to whaling, this community was the center of the entire region. Now, all that remains are a few houses and the ruins of the old whaling station.
They use this to melt down the blubber for the oil. They were mainly after the oil.
And the meat, it went to the locals?
Or they'd throw it away. Later, they began to make animal meal with the meat.
At the end of the 19th century, the sea around Iceland was rich with whales. Around 1890, Norwegians moved into Hesteyri to systematically whale the nearby fjords. For the inhabitants of the West Fjords, who had lived closed in on themselves, it was a radical change. All of a sudden, they came into contact with the rest of the world. Foreigners came to work in their region and intermarried with the local women. Icelanders left their country to learn a profession, then came back with new skills. After 20 years, Iceland banned whaling, for nearly all the whales had been massacred. "15 years later, the country once again authorized whaling, but issued permits only to Icelandic companies.
It's very much a part of Icelandic history, yeah. People say, well, we should just bomb it all down and clean it, you know, because it's a pollution in the environment, but I think it's old enough that it's an interesting kind of a relic in a way, you know. I like to come here. It's getting maybe a bit dangerous, falling on your head, but yeah, I like it.
People survived here in these fjords for hundreds of years, or 1,000 years almost, with what they can find in these fjords. Fish in the fjords, and mussels, and birds, and eggs, and anything they could find. They were 100% sustainable for hundreds of years, so it's totally possible.
Delicacy. Still alive.
bit like oysters, just better. More taste.
There are very few roads in the West Fjords, so the only way to get to the wildest spots is by boat. This isolated territory has given rise to generations of intrepid sailors, like Siggy, eager for adventure.
Anna Kuisaurur. Já, góðan daginn. Ég ætlaði bara að aðtöku hvort það heyrist ekki í mig. Ég var að laga eins og nefnum stöðuna.
Siggy has turned the Aurora into an ideal base camp. On board, life unfolds to the rhythm of the sun. And when night falls, the Aurora becomes a cozy cocoon, like every other home in Iceland.
She's become a bit of a mountain hut that we can move around. You can put your anchor down and live on the boat, go ashore for ski, hike, diving, whatever. I mean, all kinds of activities. Come back on the boat, have some nice dinner, good company, good conversation around the table, solve every problem of the world, go to bed, sleep, and wake up ready for next day. That's kind of what Aurora does for me.
Exchange is the cornerstone of Siggy's philosophy of life. What he has taught Vidar goes far beyond mere sailing techniques. He has transmitted to him the joy of being one with nature, and Vidar has drawn fresh strength from this to move on with his life.
What I discovered in myself that I want to learn is more about the ocean, about the sea, because I live so close to it, you know, we're dependent on it, and it's big, and it's dangerous, and it's beautiful, and it's mysterious, and everything, you know, it has a deep meaning for me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying something new, learning something new. I don't know where I'm gonna go, what I'm gonna do, just explore the ocean.
Yeah, he's ready. So in, what, 5-6 days, we'll be sailing in South England. Make us proud. I always like to learn, so it's my own self-interest. I'm just hoping that I'm going to learn something more when Vidar comes back. That'll be good.
Vidar, following the time-honored Icelandic tradition, will go abroad and then come back, richer for the experience. Every year, the first snowfalls are a signal for the northern Icelanders. They are ready to face the winter, to hunker down until spring. The waters of the fjord will soon form a dense ice pack, and Siggy will have to moor his boat as the days gradually shrink to nothing, and one long night covers this land of ice.